become intimate with the camera. That sounds really weird. I don't mean it that way.
Comics are stupid.
No Harry Potter movie is good.
And you're like, give me the Snyder Cut. Oh, sorry, just walk in front of you here. I'm gonna put my popcorn down. Oh, sorry, gotta put this here.
Universal needs to sue Sony.
Hey, I'm an idiot. I was fired from Fox. Let me go.
I'd like actually to see Venom just crush Spider-Man.
We're back today, and we've got another guest for episode, I guess, 3 now of this series. We've got Craig Wrobleski. I feel like I said that wrong. I'm sorry.
No, you got that right.
I did?
Wrobleski,
okay.
Yeah.
We have the cinematographer, the award-winning cinematographer behind shows such as The Umbrella Academy Seasons 1, 2, and 3, Fargo Season 2 and 3, and Legion Season 1, I believe, right?
Yes, correct.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So we're so happy you came on today. So now I'm going to start by asking you, what is cinematography? How do you define it?
That's a big question to start with. Well, cinematography is basically bringing a story to life via images. The job of the cinematographer is to interpret the script and the director's vision and bring that to life with cameras, lenses, lighting, and camera movement, visual storytelling tools, basically. So that's the idea. I always liken it to, the director and the writer are the architects, and the cinematographer is like the engineer who has to kind of make the building stand up. Like the writer and the director will have the idea for to continue the analogy, what the building should look like, but it's my job to kind of figure out how to build it and make it stand up.
So in terms of that aspect of it, let's go a little bit more into that, which is, have you ever had, I guess, conflicts with a director on how you believe something should go, or what's practical for something, like what a practical way to do something is, and the director having a different vision? And that, like, has that ever been like a clash?
Well, the creative process there's always a little bit of struggle in it. I mean, that's part of, the nature of it is everyone, you hire people for their opinions and for the way they see things and their perspective. And there's inevitably going to be some differences of opinion now and then. But I think the key thing is, when you talk with everyone, you talk through the project, and the idea is that everyone's on the same page to begin with, so that you don't get into those kind of arguments, because everyone has kind of already figured each other out a little bit and said, like, okay, this person feels right, and I have a good feeling about their take on things. But there's inevitably challenges, and there's inevitably some heated discussions now and then, or differences of opinion, and also then you bring budget into the mix, and you get into the realities of, do you have the money to do this? Do you have the time to do this? And do you have the resources to do it? So those, that can cause some stress now and then when you get into those sorts of conversations. But, generally it works out pretty well.
Okay, that's very interesting, because I don't know, it's just like always something, I guess, in my mind, which is like, I feel like there's a lot of like time for the directors kind of like, I really want to do this, and it's kind of like, but it doesn't work, or you can't do it. And so that's interesting to hear. So
there's never enough time or money. Doesn't matter how much you have, there's never enough time or money.
So do you have a general style when you go about shooting something? Like, do you have a signature style, if that makes any sense?
I hope not. I would like to think, I guess it's to the audience to decide, but I would like to think that I bring fresh eyes to every project, and I try to approach each project with a sort of clear mind and an open mind about what it wants to be, and then modify the tools that I'm using and the ways I'm using them to adapt to that style, and to make sure that I'm serving the story and not serving myself. That's always the risk with cinematography, is that you're doing it for yourself, and you're doing it because you think it looks cool. It's a fact. That's not the right reason to do these things. You want to do them to serve a story and to serve the director's vision. So I would like to think I don't have a style, but I don't know. I mean, you've seen my stuff. Do you think I have a style?
I mean, I don't think you have style. So I was wondering if there's anything that you're doing, like you're trying to do to subtly to keep things similar. Because
no, I quite the opposite actually. I'm working quite consciously to not make things the same. To that end, I test every time I start a project. I start fresh with the tools. I don't say I'm going to use these lenses and this camera on every project. It's always a matter of testing. I'll test cameras, filter combinations, filter and lens combinations, and then camera lens combinations. All the elements, kind of test the tools out to see what feels right for the project, and then you work out your look, and I want to rebuild it from scratch each time, so everything gets its due, and you're giving the project a chance to tell you what it wants to be, and you're not inflicting yourself on it. You're not saying like, here's what this is going to be, no matter what it wants to be, this is what I say it's going to be, which isn't the right way to handle it in my mind.
Well, that's actually interesting, because I was remembering another interview I watched with you where you'd kind of talked about Legion and how you actually you didn't want to do what kind of other superhero projects or X-Men projects typically did. And so I thought that was kind of interesting too. Do you want to talk about a bit more about why?
Well, I think it goes back to, I don't have sort of knee-jerk reactions to things where I try not to look at something and say, I don't want to do it just because someone else did it. Like, that's not necessarily the right reason either. It's like, really, it's just kind of looking at it and saying, like, what does this want to be? Because I believe every project, I mean, this sort of sounds a little new agey maybe, but every project kind of wants to be something. The writer has certain intentions in mind, and there's certain things on the script that will kind of hint at what it wants to be. And I think it's our job to find out what it wants to be. And in the process, of course, we bring ourselves to it, and we kind of help guide it towards what it wants to be. But I do believe that a well-written project and a well-considered project will tell you what it wants to be in the process. And that's kind of the fun of it, to my mind. When something like the Umbrella Academy, when I was approached about the show, the showrunner Steve Blackman said it's Wes Anderson meets X-Men. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. I haven't even read a script, but if you put it that way, I'm in. And then you read the scripts and you realize this doesn't want to be like a typical superhero show. It doesn't present itself that way. It doesn't jump off the page that way. It jumps off the page as something else. And that, I think, is one of the key things a cinematographer needs to do, is look at a project objectively and read the script and let the script guide them in terms of what they want to do, and not have them try to push the script in a certain direction or shoehorn the script into a certain direction where maybe it doesn't want to go.
So I got to ask this question then. Why cinematography? Why was that the thing you decided that you wanted to do? Was there a reason, or?
It kind of found me, to be honest. I actually went to school to take radio. The school that I applied to was a 2-year course. The first year was radio. The second year was TV. And I wanted to get into radio because I love music, and I thought, it'd be fun to play music all day. Then I got into radio and I realized that's not how radio works. You don't just get to sit and play music all day. So my whole career path was fairly misguided to begin with. But I went through this first year, and then I was like, okay, radio's not for me. So what do I do? And I kind of hung in there with this course and said, well, I applied and I got in. I might as well try to finish it. So the second year was coming, and it was TV. And quite honestly, I had very little interest in TV. I was like, TV just doesn't interest me. And then there was a sort of introduction to TV course. that was like 2 weeks long, and they kind of introduced you to all the tools and kind of told you what TV might be like. And I remember so vividly there was a lineup in the classroom where everyone was lining up waiting to touch the camera. I'm like, okay, this sort of sounds interesting. And I was waiting in line, and everyone was going through, and then when it came my turn, I remember so vividly, I put my hands on the camera, and I just felt like I knew what to do with it. Like it was like that. It was really bizarre. I've never experienced that with anything else, where I just put my hands on this and like, I feel like I know what to do with this thing.
It kind of makes sense, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it sort of clicked. And it was bizarre from going from, having sort of zero interest, well, not zero interest, but very little interest in TV or cameras in general, to the next minute, like being obsessed with it because I touched it and I felt like, okay, this is it. I want to get to know this thing. This is what I want to do. So that's kind of how it found me. If I'd have skipped that class or if I'd have been sick that day, I don't know if I ever would have discovered cinematography. It's hard to say, but I'm glad that it did find me because I love it. Doing it for something, and yeah,
it's like
I always say
superhero
it's a job you never
story.
get good at, you just get better. Well, I'll leave it to you to put it that way, but yeah, that's, I guess, kind of what it's like. That's funny.
It's like if Spiderman never went on that field trip, he would never gotten bitten by the spider, right? Same thing.
Oh yeah, I guess it's the same idea. I get bit by the spider then, yeah. I'm going to use that one from now on, if you don't mind. I got bit by the spider. That's how I got into cinematography. I got bit by the spider.
The radioactive cinematography spider.
Right.
Alon, I think you had a question you want to ask?
Yeah, just a little more, I guess, a side question. What is your favorite song? What's your favorite kind of music?
Oh, wow. Well, right. I love all kinds of music. Right now, I've been listening to a lot of ambient music lately, as a kind of way I'm in between projects, so I'm trying to kind of rest my mind a bit. So I've been listening to a lot of Stars of the Lid and Wing Victory for the Sullen are kind of two of my go-tos in terms of just stuff to listen to, just to quiet my mind and just give my sort of subconscious a chance to recover so I can start dreaming again at some point.
So now what music did you want to play on the radio before you realized what radio was really about?
I wanted to play like alternative stuff like REM and the Smiths. I'm old, so these are old bands, but all these sort of alternative bands from the 90s. I thought that'd be cool. Or the late 80s, I guess it was, the Replacements, bands like that. I thought, hey, that'd be fun. And I don't know if you remember the show WKRP in Cincinnati. You're probably way too young to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like really old. It's like from the 80s. But I watched a show was set at a radio station, and it was just endless comedy, and they were always having a good time. And I thought, oh, that looks like a fun way to make a living. And the fact that I built my career path on a sitcom is pretty ridiculous. So kids, I wouldn't recommend that as an idea for how to approach your career. Don't base trust. Yeah, I just got lucky because I got bit by the spider.
It's kind of funny though, because you based your entire career on something or your entire initial career on something you saw on TV, and now you make TV shows. So
You're connecting all the dots for me.
It's all connected.
It's all coming together.
It's a web, you could say.
Oh my! Oh, you're really piecing this together now. You should be a writer.
I know. So what is a day in? So you just came off filming or working on Umbrella Academy season 3, right? So what is?
I actually just finished episode 1 of an Arnold Schwarzenegger pilot for Netflix.
Whoa! I did not know that. Wait.
Yeah, I just got back from a couple of weeks ago from Toronto shooting the first episode. What's
it called?
It's called UTAP. That's the working title. I don't know what it's ultimately going to be called, but it's UTAP is the name of the working title they gave it.
Can you tell us what it's about, like generally?
The broad strokes of it is he's a spy. international spy. Arnold Schwarzenegger is an international spy, and he goes on one last mission, and things get a little complicated, and he basically can't leave the job for various reasons. So just when he thinks he's out, they pull him back in, and the rest of it is to be seen.
Alon, did you just get sold on that from that 30-second pitch?
Sounds a lot like John Wick, to be honest, but it sounds really good. It sounds like a really good story.
I know you're going to be watching.
Yeah, The Godfather, I guess.
Yeah.
You can't escape the job. Yeah, it's be a great show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That actually sounds awesome. I'm actually it just became my most anticipated show.
I think you'd enjoy it. It's a fun show. It's really fun.
So I guess coming off of that show then, because I guess that's your most recent project, what is a day in your job kind of like? Take us through that.
Well, the day starts with I'll get up and I'll have some breakfast and kind of go through the day, look at the call sheet and go through the day and make sure that I understand clearly what's ahead of me in terms of the day. I mean, which obviously I know from prep. I know what the day needs to do, but then just to refresh my mind, I'll sit and go through it before I head into the set. And then when I get to set, I'll usually get in early with the crew as they're unloading gear and we start to pre whatever and kind of get ahead as much as we can off the top of the day, pre-lighting or even just helping get the first setup going, or sometimes my time before call is just spent talking to the director and walking through the day with the director and making sure that we're clear together on what we're going to do. So that time is spent before call. For actual crew call, time is spent just kind of getting my head around the day and then getting ahead however I can. Sometimes it's just going to the different departments, camera grip and lighting, and just talking to them about specific things, making sure that we have what we need for the day. And that can be all departments too. I could be talking to props. I could talk to special effects and say, do we have smoke for this scene? Does props have these flashlights that we need for the scene? Or, just kind of making sure that we have all the ingredients. And then once crew call comes, then we get to work and we block the first scene, and then we start, once the blocking's finished, we start lighting and rehearsing with the second team, with the stand-ins. And then we bring in the actors and we shoot the scene, and that process kind of repeats throughout the day. So
I don't know if I can ask you this. I don't know if you're going to give me an answer to this, but who's your favorite director who you've worked with?
Oh, I couldn't honestly limit it to just one because they're all so different. Every project is different, every director is different. And I've had the pleasure of working with some incredible directors. Directing is a really hard job. It's everyone thinks it's you walk around like doing this and you're lining up the shots and all that stuff, and that's like literally 5% of the job. So much of what they're doing is invisible. A good director, much of what their work is invisible to the naked eye. Like they're doing so many things under the surface of the project, working with the actors, having conversations with the actors, and conversations with the writer to massage the script and all that. So that by the time they get to set, if they've done their work properly, a lot of their work is done already by the time they get to set. There's so much of the director's job that's invisible. And they all do it differently. And that's what I love about working with directors is every director has a different approach. Some of them are very meticulous and very precise and very specific. And some of them are much more on a voyage of discovery, where they just want to find it. And each one is very different. I had, like, for example, two projects like Umbrella Academy and Under the Banner of Heaven, two projects I did back to back last year. Couldn't be more different in terms of style. I mean, Umbrella Academy is the way we shoot. It's very specific. We shoot on the Alexa 65, which is a big, beautiful camera, but it's a camera that kind of wants you to use it in a very specific way because it's a big 65 mil sensor. It's can create very graphic frames and really emphasize camera movement. So you want to be very specific in terms of how you use it. And we are on Umbrella Academy. The show is shot in a very, very precise and considered way. And then I went to do Under the Banner of Heaven, which when I picked it up on episode 5, and the shooting style in that show that had been established was there was no marks. You don't put marks down for the actors. We wouldn't rehearse with the actors before we shot. We would just basically start shooting right away. And it was very, for lack of a better term, loose. And I don't want to say loose in the sense of, that we didn't think about it. It wasn't just we're just making it up as we go along, but it was very much about lighting the entire set and then letting the actors perform on that stage that we built for them, which was a very different style than Umbrella Academy, which is much more specific. So, then the directors I worked with on those projects were very different as well, because, you have to bring a very different directing style to Umbrella Academy than you do to Under the Banner of Heaven, to achieve the style and the general form of the show. So, this is a very long answer to your question. I apologize. But I mean, every director is so different. And that's part of what I love, too much like how I love I love working with directors because each one makes me work differently and makes me look at my job differently and modify my job to fit into how they want this project to come to life. So it's an endless kind of, in a perfect world, this job is an endless process of evolution where you're just constantly reinventing yourself and reinventing how you do things based on each project. And that's part of what I love about it.
So, Lon,
I'm sure you can edit that down into a much more lucid answer than that one.
Oh, we're not going to edit any of this. This is all going.
What? Oh
yeah.
My God. So you'll see me drinking coffee and everything?
Yeah. It's the whole experience. Well. Alon, you wanted to ask him something about one of the shows he worked on.
Yeah, so I started watching Under the Banner of Heaven. So far it's actually really good. It's I gotta say it's a lot of heavy subject matter. But I wanted to ask what's that like working on Under the Banner of Heaven and being on set with guys like Andrew Garfield and Sam Worthington, and what was your particular vision for as a cinematographer for that show when you were cinematographer of those particular episodes?
Well, like I said, I came in on episode 5, so the style was kind of well established by the time I came in, which isn't to say that I couldn't bring my own thing to it. I mean, episode 5 had a lot of elements in it that the rest of the series didn't, and a lot of flashbacks and things that were different than what had been in the rest of the show. And the director and I, that's Lance Black, who was also the showrunner and the writer, who that's a blessing to be able to work on a show with your director also being the showrunner and the writer, because no one understands the project better than Lance does. So the style was well established, and really I figured out pretty early on that my biggest job on Under the Banner of Heaven was to set a stage for these performances. Like that was really, it wasn't about the camera, it wasn't about being flashy with the camera or showing off at all. To quite the opposite. You wanted the camera to be as invisible as possible in the process, so that you really felt like what you're watching was authentic, and you really felt like it was real and it was happening right in front of you. And I talked to the camera operators and I said, it should never feel like we know what's going to happen. Even if we're on take 5 and that the actor's probably going to move left to right at this point, you need to behave like you're seeing it for the first time, and you need to be reacting to it. Where if the camera move is too perfect, it's going to feel like we know what's going to happen, and it feels like we're ahead of the story. And the critical thing I realized with the style they'd established was it needs to feel like we're responding to the story that's happening in front of us. So it feels like we're experiencing it as the audience is experiencing. Really fun style to work in, especially as a camera operator, because you become such a participant in the story and in the storytelling. So, that was the aspect of the style that I really loved. And, when you're working with people like Andrew Garfield and Sam Worthington and, the entire cast was incredible. you're really there, your job is to serve their performance. Like that is my job, is to be in the background and as invisible as possible on a show like that. If people are watching Under the Banner of Heaven and paying too much attention to the photography, then I'm not doing my job properly, because I never want to overtake the story or the actor's performance in a show like that. It's not about the camera. So it's such a joy to work on a show like that and watch those kind of performances, because it's just what they do, like Andrew Garfield, like everybody, they're just such remarkable performers, and what they're doing is so real and so authentic that you just get pulled into it. It's like I know it's a good day at work when I'm watching the monitor and I forget that I'm on set and I forget that I'm working, and I'm watching it, and it's like I'm just lost in what they're doing. And and hopefully all the elements come together where the lens choice and the camera movement and the lighting all kind of gel to become one thing with what the actor's doing. And when that happens, you just get lost in it. And then when they yell cut, it's like, oh, I'm at work. You sort of have to be reminded that, okay, now, yeah, let's say I'm being paid to do this now. Okay, I need to go back and do my job. Because you do really get lost in it on a show like that, where these performances are so incredibly gripping and emotional that you're just again, this is a very long answer. But working on a show like that it's really just about blending into the background as much as you can. And one of the actors said to me at the end when we wrapped, they actually mentioned that it was, that I can't remember how it was worded, but they kind of thanked me for being sort of invisible in the process. And, they felt supported because they knew I was there and I was there for them, but I wasn't like inflicting myself on the show. And that to me was the greatest compliment I could receive on a show like that.
Okay, so we're gonna do some rapid fire questions about you and your preferences and things like that. So what's your all-time favorite?
I don't know if I give you rapid fire answers though. It seems to be the problem.
Don't worry, by rapid fire we mean like the answers, they won't require that much elaboration. There won't be much elaboration to give.
Okay,
so.
I'll try and restrain myself.
We love this. This is great. This is like, yeah. What's your all-time favorite movie?
Oh man, I knew you were gonna ask that. That popped in my mind is the Thin Red Line. I don't know if that's my favorite movie of all time, but that's the first thing that popped into my head. Not because it's a war movie, because it's a movie about humanity, and it's about man's relationship to nature and man's relationship to each other. And it's beautifully shot and beautifully acted. And yeah, so again, I don't know if that's my favorite movie, but that's the first one that popped into my head.
What movies are you currently watching?
I haven't actually watched anything in a little while. I'm sort of taking a little break from imagery. But I haven't watched a movie, but my wife and I just finished watching the last season of Peaky Blinders, the Netflix series. And it's unbelievable. It is so good. I was just floored. Like, I don't watch TV easily. It takes a lot to bring me into a show. And Peaky Blinders, the last season just blew my mind. Like, yeah, I'd recommend it to anybody. It was like mind-boggling. I mean, the whole series is incredible, but the last season was just next level. So that's the most recent thing I watched.
And when it comes to like, how's the proper way to phrase it? I guess when it comes to working, like choosing the projects you work on, essentially, is there something like, is there a specific tone you're drawn to, or a specific type of project, I guess?
Well, to me, it has to have humanity in it. I came to realize a few years ago that what I love about the camera is the ability to connect with people, connect with the people that I work with to make the project, and then connect with the audience via how we tell the story. So any project that offers that kind of connection, that ability to reach out to an audience and and really connect with them on a human and emotional level, those are the things that appeal to me. And that was the appeal of Umbrella Academy, for example, where it's not actually a superhero show. It's a show about family, and it's a show about being a fish out of water and being an outsider and being, someone who doesn't fit into society. And it's all about those things, and that was the appeal of it. So any project that hits me, connects with me on a human and emotional level, or is the kind of stuff I want to work on.
And so that's interesting you say that, because you started off working on documentaries, and I feel like that's like kind of the ultimate version of connecting with people.
Exactly.
Is that kind of like where that interest or your kind of desire to have projects that connect with people started?
I think so. I think because I miss doing documentaries, because it's, you meet incredible people doing documentaries, and you learn a lot about life. You learn a lot about how people live and how life affects people and how people respond to hardship and all those sorts of things. And I think, I think my approach to the work is an extension of the documentaries, because, I think ultimately I would love to use the camera to document human stories and to make those emotional connections with the audience. So I think, you're probably right. It is. I never really thought about it that way, but I think you're right. I think it is an extension of the documentary work, but because I'm always striving for a sense of authenticity in what I'm doing. I don't, even on a show like Umbrella Academy, which is so, such fantastic imagery, it always has to feel somewhat grounded in reality, or I think the audience just can't relate to it at all, where it's just like, this is, in the air. I can't, heavy things. I can't pick up a car and throw it at somebody. But, if you can relate to the emotion behind why people are doing these things, I think that's the strength of a show like Umbrella. So, that's, I think, what I strive for. Yeah, I think you're right.
So now
you figured me out, Khalil.
I know.
Between the spider bite thing and all this, I'm learning so much about myself in this interview. It's great.
So a little bit more of a tricky question for you. You have unlimited money, okay? You can choose a general story, a genre, or general plot. You can choose a director, and you can choose two-star actors. What's your project?
Oh my God. It's only like 8:30 here in the morning. It's too early for me to answer this question. Oh, wow. Get back to you on that one. That's a lot, man. That's a big question. Well, going back to the Thin Red Line, like a project like that, I think would be something I'd love to do, where it's just kind of it's a study on man's relationship to nature and man's relationship to himself and the people around him. I know that's a very vague pitch for a film, and I would never get a film made if I pitched it that way. But something like that with a performer, like an Andrew Garfield, for example, who is so tuned into human emotion and human behavior. Would be incredible. I just honestly, I can't narrow down to actors because there's so many good ones out there. And but I would love to do a project like that with actors that are so tuned into their surroundings and their characters that everything just becomes invisible, and you're capturing something that feels so authentic and real that you even forget that there's a process that went into creating it. Like when in a perfect world, the audience is so immersed in a project that they forget that someone made it, that it's just there. I have no idea if that answered your question or not.
Oh no, it did. It fully did. So I've got to ask you one more thing before we ask kind of our final question, because I know that you've got things to do, I'm sure. So we're not gonna keep you much longer. But there've been a lot of movies, like you look at Birdman and where they do the one shot thing, mm-hmm. right? What's your view on that? Kind of break that down.
Well, I've done a lot of in the on set we call them oneers. That's the sort of the code name for it. Like, a director will say, I'd love to do this as a oneer. And when they say that that means they want to do it as one unbroken shot. I love doing oneers because it makes the crew different about what they're about to do. When the crew knows that every frame of what you're about to do is going to be on the screen, it changes how they do it. I mean, when you're shooting a scene and it's going to be edited, and that they won't use this part, they won't use that part, this part won't get used, that part won't get used. It changes how they engage with. It changes everything. It changes how the actors engage with the scene. It changes how the camera operators engage. How everyone sort of leans in when you do a oneer is part of what I love about it, because everyone's like tenses up. It's almost like doing live TV, where once the slate claps and they say action, they know that everything they're about to do will be on screen. So I love them in that way, and I love doing them because it also, in going back to the idea of setting the stage for performance, that's the ultimate way to do it, is to do it as a oneer, where that like what you're about to do is basically a stage play and it's all going to be there. What I don't like about them is when they're used sort of as a gimmick, where it's like, I loved the first half of Birdman. I thought it was brilliant. That doing it as one shot pushed me to the world with him, became so connected to the characters because of the way you were interacting with them. You weren't being presented them on a platter the way you can do with editing, where it's like, here's a character, here's a shot, now this is your character. When you meet them in that kind of flowing way, I think you engage with the characters differently. But I do remember in Birdland, there was a scene on a rooftop where I think he was talking to his daughter. And I remember that's when it bumped me out. That's when the style bumped me out, because I was like, okay, now I'm in an emotional scene with two characters, and I felt like I literally felt the camera operator trying to get to the next shot, where it's like, I'm trying to get to that piece of dialogue. And I'm only saying this because I've been there and I've done that, where you set up a oneer and at one point you start to stretch what the oneer can do. And there's always a point when the camera wants to be in two places at the same time. And that's when oneers kind of fall apart. And there was a scene on the roof, when I felt myself emotionally disconnect from the characters, because I felt like I was too aware of the camera, trying to make the oneer work at that point in time. And, I honestly think that, a film like Birdman, all due respect to the filmmakers who are incredible, and, far be it from me to offer any kind of criticism to those kind of filmmakers. But as an audience member, I felt like the back half of the movie could have been shot more conventionally. When it became more intimate between the father and the daughter, that's when I felt like the oneer stopped working on an emotional level. It still worked beautifully on a structural level, and they did a great job of it. But I felt like at that point, we could have disconnected from the idea of the oneer and then connected emotionally to the characters a little more. And then you take a film like 1917, which, I think that, but even then, there's scenes where you felt like they were fighting to make the one shot, because I've done 5-page dialogue scenes as oneers, and it's hard. It's really hard to do well. It's hard to not have that moment happen when you do want the camera to be in two places at the same time. But hopefully the audience doesn't bump out.
That I was really hoping we would go toward that, kind of talk about it as used as a gimmick and kind of forced, because I wanted to hear what your perspective on that was. So I'm glad you went there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's risky, and like I said earlier, anytime you make a choice because you think it's going to be cool, or you think, that anytime you're using a visual gimmick is risky, because it can work or it can just draw too much attention to itself and pull you out of the story. So, yeah, it's a fine balance.
So, Lon, you want to ask the last question that we always ask?
I'm getting nervous now.
So, what advice do you have for young Canadians who want to pursue cinematography? What advice do you have to lead them in the right direction to becoming successful cinematographers in the future?
Well, the best advice I can offer is to just speak with your own voice. You know, it's critical. The biggest risk with cinematography is you end up being too referential to others' work, and you end up just kind of mimicking others. You know, where you'll see something and you'll be like, "Hey, that's cool. I want to do that," and then you'll just kind of mimic it. And I think it's really important to find your own way through this job. You know, it's really, like I said before, it's a job you never get good at. You just get better. And I think the only way to find your voice is to shoot. You know, it's really important to watch a lot of things, and if you like something, to dissect it and to say, what's appealing to me about this? What do I like about this? Like, what, you know, beyond the fact that it looks cool or whatever, like what draws, if you're emotionally drawn into something and you feel a real connection to an image, figure out why, like kind of dig into it and do a deep dive on it and say, like, what is it about this image that appeals to me, and kind of store that away, and kind of put it in your toolkit and say, like, okay, if I want to create that feeling in other people with the images I create, how do I do that? And then just go out and shoot. And, you know, the only way to do this, to get better at this job, is to make a lot of mistakes. You know, like, I've made so many mistakes I couldn't even begin to tell you. You know, I didn't quite get there. I didn't quite achieve what I wanted to do, or, you know, and like I said before, hopefully the audience doesn't bump on it. I mean, it might bump me out and I might be like, didn't get there. But, you know, the fact is, what is in my head is only ever going to live in my head. And hopefully you can get as much of it out as possible. But, you know, it doesn't always translate. So the advice is just to follow your own voice and shoot everything you can, you know. And I think a lot of people say, like, oh, I'm a drama cinematographer, but it's like, you know, just go shoot everything, you know, shoot. I shot sports, I shot corporate projects, I shot documentaries, you know, I shot sort of everything there is to shoot over the, you know, 20 years or whatever before I started shooting drama. And I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, because I constantly draw on experiences that at the time didn't seem like it would, you know, it was pushing my career forward, but I learned a lot doing it. You know, so I think it's just important to shoot, you know, like, just get out there, get to know, become intimate with the camera. That sounds really weird. I don't mean it that way. But please edit that part out. No, you can't edit that part out. Get to know the camera, so it becomes an extension. Oh, go pretty well right moment. Anyways, get to know the camera really well, and just make it an extension of yourself, where you don't even have to think about using it as a tool, where it just becomes an extension of your eye, and it becomes an extension of how you see things. And that's, you can only do that by shooting a lot, you know, and making mistakes. And, you know, sometimes you'll make mistakes on your own, you know, where you can just go out and shoot something and go, well, that didn't work. Or, you know, sometimes, unfortunately, your mistakes are a little more public, where it's like, okay, that didn't pan out the way I hoped. And you got 30 people standing at you going, okay, now what do we do? Because that didn't work. You know, so that's kind of the job. So, you know, the short version of this very, again, long answer is just to just find your voice, you know, just find out what it is, how you see the world, and figure out how to translate that to show it to other people, because that's what you'll get hired for, is your voice and how you see the world. There's lots of talented people out there, you know, who are technically gifted with the camera, but there's fewer people who have their own voice, and where every time they work on a project, they bring something to it that is beyond the technical, where they're taking things to another level. And that's the kind of cinematographer you want to be, because that's you'll be endlessly fulfilled, and you'll always keep the audience interested if you approach your work that way.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. So we're gonna wrap it up there. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you obviously, Craig, for coming on and taking the time to do this interview. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. And sorry again for the long answers. I hope the audience can edit them in their minds to get what they need out of it.
Oh, it's great. I love when people give me long answers because it makes my job asking questions easier.
All right. Well, I'm glad I could make your job easier.
And obviously, Craig is amazing, so you can follow him on social media. His social media handle thing is on the screen underneath there's a picture, and then everyone watching this can see it, so I don't need to explain it. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, follow all of us, everyone, including Craig, on social media. And don't forget to watch Umbrella Academy Season 3 and apparently this amazing spy show, which is coming out at some point in time.
Yeah. Umbrella Academy comes out June 22nd, which I don't know when this will be finished, but that's next week for us, so it's exciting.
Oh, it'll be on a Monday.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, Umbrella Academy comes out Wednesday, so
there you go. Yeah, so thank you all for watching. This was great. I love this. We'll see you all next week for episode 4.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the chat.